generation that you talk about, I feel like so much of what I've written about women's sports has an element of trying to explain to people that in the middle of competition, women are doing this really interesting thing. There's alliance even in the heat of competition. Caitlin Clark, and that's generational as well. Caitlin Clark went out of her way to elevate memories of Lynette Woodard, Pearl Moore, Cheryl Miller, and so many others. It wasn't that she set the all-time scoring record that was most important to her. It was her ability to do that while also explaining to people what shoulder she was standing on. Can you talk to me a little bit about this relationship between past and present players and the exchanges that you guys have in trying to be allies as well as competitors?
Wow, beautiful question. And just to put a bow on the end of that, not only you see the moments where it comes full circle, where Caitlin, as you mentioned, talks about and celebrates Lynette Woodard, Cheryl Miller, and those who have come before her. I mean, literally before she became the all-time leading scorer in women's college basketball, she was like screeching because she saw Maya Moore. Like you can just tell that the game, it's all about passing the baton. It's all about playing for the legacy so that the next generation can be inspired by what you did to move the game forward. But I think the perfect bow on it was after South Carolina won, Dawn Staley celebrating Caitlin Clark, because we would not have had those numbers that you started off this conversation with without Caitlin and Dawn and South Carolina and Angel Reese and LSU. In some ways, Coach Mulkey too, stirring the pot. But like, it's just cool because we understand what's at stake for women's basketball. I don't know if people fully understand how every moment that we needed to care about the game to keep moving it forward, particularly in this women's college season, we got an instant classic. It was wild. And that's because these players knew exactly what was at stake. That the eyes of the world were watching, and they're watching to show people respect our game. That's the way that Caitlin approaches her craft. That's the way that Dawn Staley approaches her craft. So I think the past and present, we draw inspiration from one another. And we understand that because we're not at the point where we can just fall back on what salary or life or just status and what that naturally brings, I think that brings out the best in us. That brings out a moment that we have been waiting for in our game to really explode. And I'll lastly say this, if you look at the timelines in which the NBA exploded, it was after Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. This is arguable, right? But still, there was an inflection point where Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, their college rivalry, transferred over to the pros where they became the most dominant players at the time. And that moved the NBA from tape delay to must-see hoops around that time. That was around 30 years into the NBA. We are 28 years into the WNBA, a very similar timeline. We watched the intersection of race and gender and just general, I keep saying this word, badassery from athletes come together in a moment that captivated hearts and minds, very similar to what happened 30 years prior for the NBA. We're not saying that we're going to become the NBA, but I am going to say is that we are at this special moment of confluence, a convergence where college is meeting the pros and people are seeing the game for what it is. And I think that will hopefully, fingers crossed, breed sustainability and also respect for everyone, every young girl that chooses to pick up a basketball.